What's up, everybody? Welcome into Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast. As always, joined by the great Phil Perry. There is a lot of chicken on that bone today. We got a lot to get to. First thing we're going to get to, Phil's microphone. I don't have mine. I apologize. So if the audio is not great, the Skull Crusher will fix it. But Phil, we got to talk the Tom Brady tampering situation locally. It doesn't really matter to us what happens with the Dolphins. I mean, it does, but I think the more compelling aspect of it is the timing of Tom Brady's dalliance. We're also going to get into the sputtering start that the Patriots offense is encountering during camp. Yeah, it's growing pains and it's part of the process, but also, if you're Mac Jones, aren't you saying, why are we doing this again? Get all that and more on Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast.
Patriots time, world champion, and there ain't nothing you can do about it.
All right, Phil, I want you to tell me how this reflects on Tom Brady, the fact that he in August of 2019 began a dalliance with the Miami Dolphins while still under contract to the New England Patriots.
My first reaction to the story, period, was that this is embarrassing for Brady. I know the Dolphins are the ones being punished. Stephen Ross, suspended, fined, big-time punishment. First-round pick in 2023 for a team that's trying to build something. But for me, again, we care about the Tom Brady angle. It's embarrassing. You can't be talking to another team like that while you're under contract for a different team, a division rival, no less. And I know he wasn't happy here, Tom. You did a better job than anybody chronicling the entire years-long saga. And so we posited even during that season that this probably is it for Tom.
Mm-hmm.
You still can't do what he allegedly.
Yeah, it's more aggravated agitation. It's okay to be pissed off at the situation, but when you're actually going to start taking phone calls on it, you are performing aggravated. It's a little mutinous. And for a player of Tom Brady's ilk, and for the resume he built here, and for the accomplishments he had, and to become the greatest player in NFL history in many people's eyes, and to inhabit the place that he does in Bostonians' hearts and New England's hearts and football fans' hearts, it leaves a little skid, which brings me to why. And that's the thing that I can explain, I think, is the why of it. Why would he do that? The timing is what's interesting to me. In August of 2019, the Patriots finally agreed to a contract with Brady. The contract, instead of the 2 years and $50 million the Patriots had pledged they would give him, the Drew Brees contract, all guaranteed, they instead gave him a 2-year contract, the second year of which was basically just written on smoke. It wasn't real. And the Patriots bandied about as if it was real, and it wasn't. We determined that really quickly. Once Brady realized that they did a bait and switch on him with the contract he anticipated getting, and that they were again trying to wedge him into bonus-laden contracts, of which he had had previously and didn't get, it's when the straw broke the camel's back. Now, should the camel have run off and started showing leg to the division rival? No, especially with a broken back. But that's what happened, and that's what's interesting to me. So if you want to say Tom Brady's, kind of an asshole for 2019 and actually trying to orchestrate his departure from this team, yeah, you got some evidence on your side. If you want to look at the nuance of it and say, why would a guy who was the model employee and citizen do this? It's because he felt so betrayed, not by just the head coach, but by ownership. The Pontius Pilate Act that Robert Kraft had pulled and said, you guys figure it out. It went sideways for Brady up his chimney sweep. Go ahead.
Here is the impact, though, that I could see, and the toll being taken on his legacy, honestly, when it comes to something like this, is that he was under contract, not just with a division rival, but with a team coming off a Super Bowl, A team that looked like through the first half of the season an excellent football team, right? With one of the best defenses in the league. I believe they were 8-0, and that was the year where he said to Chris Collinsworth that I must be the most miserable 8-0 quarterback in the history of the league, or something along those lines. This was a team that made the playoffs, that had a home playoff game, that actually lost in the regular season finale to the team that he had been communicating with about jumping ship to. That doesn't look great.
Doesn't.
But a team, Tom, that should have been competitive, and to be doing this mid-season, you can't be all in. I don't think you can.
Well,
that's great. He was the great separator in terms of being able to compartmentalize. Excuse me, but I don't think you can be all in and be having these conversations on the side.
So, is Tom Brady a sympathetic figure in that the Patriots pushed him to a point where he would do something so out of character that he would actually go and start going behind the back of the team and the franchise that he had built everything with? Is it the Patriots' fault to allow it to get there? That they would not commit to him, so he went to find his love elsewhere? I mean, it's basically talking those terms, divorce and relationships. He wasn't going to get what he wanted to get here, so he was planning for his future. And he had to step out to do it, and he did. It's not defensible, but it's a reason. What sucks is there are smoking gun instances in that 2019 season we can point to. Not of Brady not trying, but I remember the Jets game. They sucked in that Jets game, first one. And Brady, that was the first time Brady started ringing the bell about, we're not as good as you think. We don't look that good. And it went on. They weren't a good team. We knew it. They knew it. The Antonio Brown thing, again, that happens in September, which only amplified Brady's feelings. As much as Brady has said, even I think it was on the Howard Stern show, I was done in August. I don't think he completely went through the motions after the 2019 season leading into 2020. He heard the Patriots out. He had conversations with Bill Belichick, but Belichick in the conversations that they had prior to Brady becoming a free agent in mid-March said, yeah, we can't do more than $22 million against the cap for you. Well, no, you're not going to get your 2 years and 50, which is exactly, ironically, exactly what the Tampa Bay Buccaneers gave him. Purpose pitch. So whether Brady was beaten down so much that he became unfaithful, or whether he should have stuck to his marriage vows, we can have different views on it, but there is no way to say that looks good for him.
It's fascinating too, all of the behind the scenes and the emotion that goes into it, but it does also reek of the rules don't apply to me. Right? I mean, and I get it. Listen, I'm not naive. Tampering happens all the time in all of these sports. But it does take a certain level of courage, I think, to try to engage in it at all.
Or arrogance.
It's another word. If you're Tom Brady and you have this relationship with the league that is well documented, that if anything ever were to leak out, they would pursue it and pursue it aggressively. And so now they have. And he's not the one who gets the brunt of the discipline, but it really does not shine a kind light on a guy who for a very long time, like you said, it finally pushed him to do something out of character. But the image that Tom Brady has projected, and honestly, Tom, that Don Yee has projected too, is that they are a button-up operation. That it's all class and and well-deserved. Those reputations are well-deserved. And this just runs counter to that. That's all.
Yeah, and I guess we can look at it and say, did Tom Brady wake up one day in August and say, I'm going to try and get to the Dolphins. I'm sick of these pricks. Or did the 2014 drafting of Jimmy Garoppolo become a dent? We understand his age and contract situation. Was that another dent? Or call it an axe chop into the tree. The Deflategate tenor, where, ask Tom, the 2017 reluctance to move on from Jimmy Garoppolo. And then when you do it, send him away with the most flowery and adoring words you can. And then in 2017, ride the crap out of Rob Gronkowski and try and trade him. Was that 17 or 18? But ride the crap out of him in 17. ride him so mercilessly for going to the Guerrero and TB12 stuff, and then ride Guerrero like a mule. All the while, have a guy who's performing in 16 and 17 as the league's MVP, taking your team to Super Bowls, and then winning one in 2018 and still saying, yeah, we're not going to commit to you, and finding every reason not to. That to me is why I understand where he got to where he got. Maybe I'm more sympathetic to him because I watched it in real time unfold, talking to the people around him, having conversations with him. And he never really went directly to me and said, maybe once or twice, guys, but you knew where he was. So to see this happen in 2019, like I didn't think that the tampering, Phil, was going to involve August of 2019. I thought it was going to be January 2020 shit, like after the season ended. That's what looks shitty. So now when Brady's throwing up his hands at N'Keal Harry or at training camp in Tennessee telling Josh McDaniels to tell somebody else to motion because they don't want him to do it, that's the folks who said Brady mailed it in 2019 because he was pissed certainly have some justification for saying so now.
Tom, I don't want to over dramatize this at all, but do you think there are any fans, because it's the Dolphins, because it was happening during the season, do you think there are any fans that say, well, he was with us and he left and good for him, it was his choice and he went to a better team and he had success and I'm happy for him? Do you think there is any segment of those people who look at this story now and say, oh man, I didn't know you had 100% or start in August and you're talking to our rival?
Yep, I do. And I think that they have every right to do it. I do. I mean, all the people out there who have dogs named Brady and kids named Brady and, have their ticket stubs from all the great days that he gave. It's a black mark. It absolutely is. Now, how long does the black mark last? Does it sully 20 years? Absolutely not. Where does it fit in the obituary? I think it'll fade away. But I think over the next 3 years, people are going to remember it pretty clearly. 2019, how did it end? And this is, again, how we did the reporting on all this as it was going on. And people are like, la, 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 Curran, you're making it up. It's what was going on. He wasn't happy with the way he had been treated. As I've stated many times, he didn't walk out the door until Belichick held it open for him and kept handing him his hat. It happened for years, and he finally walked through it. But before he walked out, he apparently had a destination in mind, which is interesting because as we were starting, it was before the end of the season, and I knew that we had to be on this stuff because it was going to happen quick. I had spoken to folks close to Brady, and, so where would he conceivably want to go? And I mentioned Miami to somebody close to him, and they said, I said, not Miami, right? Too much rebuilding. They got a lot of draft picks, and they got a lot of cap space, which made me more curious about Miami. So when the Patriots did have their season finale here, Chris Greer, the general manager for the Dolphins, was on the sideline. And I went up to Chris, son of Bobby Greer, former Patriots GM, and I said, would you guys ever have any interest in Brady? Knowing that he's not going to answer me on the record because tampering. But he said, why would he ever want to come here? We're rebuilding. Now, did Chris Greer not even have an idea that Bruce Beal was talking to Brady, who's one of the Dolphins' limited partners, and that Stephen Ross was involved? Or was Chris Greer privy to this? I would imagine that at some point they said, we might try and get Brady. So it's all interesting, huh?
Can I ask you one more thing?
Well, sure.
Does this now, getting out, prevent Brady from going to Miami next year? Or does it at least make it harder? I mean, if he had it in his mind, he'd like to eventually become part of an ownership group, play with this team that's built this, what looks like great offense, live in Miami, still show the world that he can continue to compete and continue to play, maybe even win a Super Bowl, coming out of the AFC East where he spent the vast majority of his career. Does this make it impossible for him to go to Miami next year? Or is it just a sidebar story to Tom Brady doing what Tom Brady wants to do?
Yeah, I think it's funny. It might even make him more convicted to go to Miami if he ever was going to go there. Well, now I will go there. How do you like that? But I really do think it's more likely than not that this is his final season in the NFL, just from folks I've spoken to who kind of know the inner workings of what the Brady family is at least planning for this year. Do you think the NFL did a little bit of wag the dog with dropping this now, one day after the Deshaun Watson situation? How can we get Deshaun off people's minds for a day? Drop that Dolphins thing.
No doubt. Right? Is there any question in your mind that was a conversation somewhere? They're so conscious of how things are playing.
Should we put a cork in the Brady stuff, understanding that we might have to come back to it at some point in the near future?
Yes.
All right. Let's get on to the New England Patriots of 2022. And here's Bill Belichick this morning in his press conference explaining to us, hey, it's early yet.
Second day of camp this week, so, got off to a decent start yesterday. Obviously a lot of things to work on. Hopefully we'll see some improvement. Today I had a chance to go through the film and straighten some things out. Guys getting used to being in pads and, a little different fundamentally, especially on the interior lines. But, receivers getting hit and DBs jamming and then run force and so forth. So, just keep stacking these days together and, give it a little time here and see where we're at.
So Bill is saying relax, which he should, because it is early. But his quarterback, Mac Jones, who during his press access on Tuesday mentioned specifically one adjective that I thought was very instructive. The word was new. He said new offense. So it is indeed a new offense. But Mac doesn't seem that psyched about where things are.
Yeah, I think we have a lot of room to grow here. And, the goal is for me not to run the ball and throw it. So I think our offensive line's doing a good job. We just have to get on the same page. It's very competitive. And when we lose the day, to me, that's like a shot in the heart, It's like we lost the game. So there's a lot more than that because it's practice. You want to learn. But at the end of the day, we're out here competing. And the goal is to, have more good plays than the other team. And in that case, that's the defense right now. And I feel like we can compete even more and even better. But a lot of it's just execution and the X's and O's and figuring out how to communicate with each other. So better days ahead. But, we're in the start of this thing and we got to get it going. But we just take it day by day.
We understand Bill's vantage point on this, Phil. So let's skip over that. Let's go right to where Mac is. If it's a new offense and these are the normal growing pains, to me, it's got to be discouraging for him to say, I just learned the other one and it was working okay. Why are we doing this? It looks like we have wasted plays. Phil, what did you see on Monday and Tuesday of padded practices to make you say, okay, it's going in fits and starts. This is a process.
It most certainly is a process. And I thought you could actually hear in Mac Jones's voice, there's a little internal struggle between the understanding that this is going to take some time, but the desperate need to prove that the offense can be better than it is. He wants to go to the line of scrimmage and change the play to the play that works, Tom, and we can get into some of that later. But they're running stuff that just is getting blown up within a half second of the ball being snapped. And I just thought the word I used today is disjointed. And I think it applies to both sets of practices. In the 11-on-11 periods, to me, the offense looks like a team that's running something it hasn't run before. Maybe coached by guys who haven't had to coach it before. It's especially along the offensive line. And it's worth noting, Matt Patricia is entitled the offensive line coach, but his attention is being pulled in a variety of different directions right now. They look leaky in both the run game and the pass game. We're seeing unblocked rushers in pass protection. We're seeing unblocked linebackers in the run game, leading to a number of run stuffs. I just want to read for you a couple of notes that I tweeted today. I have a thread on what I thought of the offense at Phil A. Perry on the Twitter machine. I said, when the ones went against the ones in 11-on-11s, the play was disjointed. what Jones alluded to during his presser. I counted 6 positive plays out of 17 total. And among the bad reps, were 4 run stuffs, 2 quote unquote sacks, a throwaway by Mac Jones on a play that was blown up, a pass breakup at the line of scrimmage, and a drop by Damian Harris. And I know Jones said, hey, better days ahead for the offense, but to me, it makes a lot of sense that, you could at times sense some frustration from the guy, because it has been 2 days where they've lost and the defense has been the winner of the day.
So here's where it's difficult for Mac Jones and the Patriots offense. They understand that if you're going to input a new offense, you have to get the data and you have to run things. You have to test it. You have to take it into the lab, run a few tests. And as they say in science, you're going to fail way more times than you're going to succeed to get the right answer. But clock's ticking. It's August 2nd. And those reps where Mac Jones continually ends up having to run with the football instead of throwing it because either the pass rush got there or the coverage was too good or things didn't look correct after the snap, that's a wasted rep on a day when there's a finite amount of reps. Last year, there were a finite amount of reps, and Cam Newton took half of them. This year, it's a finite amount of reps, and they're going to spend a shit ton of them trying to reorganize their offense. To what end? That's the hard thing. They might not see the dividends in 2022 from a revamped offense because they're still getting used to all the control switches and toggles, whatever. You know what I'm saying? That's why it's a rebuilding year, Phil.
It shouldn't be. And if I'm Bill Belichick, the only reason I'm doing this is because I think these changes can take hold, if not overnight, relatively quickly. And maybe we see Bill Belichick take Bill Belichick approach of old, which, without Tom Brady, I'm not sure it's the wisest one. And given their record late in seasons in recent seasons, I'm not sure it's the wisest one. But if he looks at this as he's looked at this team for the better part of the last 2 decades and says, we have all of August, and we have the first month in September to get it all together. We've got joint practices. We have 3 preseason games. We have a quarterback who's really smart. And we have what eventually will be for us, as it is for many teams across the league, a very, very user-friendly offense. Not just quarterback friendly, but coach friendly, offensive line friendly, tight end friendly, running back with the right kind of vision and skill set friendly. There's a reason there are so many teams that do this, and why a lot of those teams, if they have the right people in place, put up real numbers year after year after year, whether it's Jimmy Garoppolo, average quarterback with the Niners, or Jared Goff, average quarterback with the Rams.
This works. It does, but here's what's interesting about that dynamic, because since Tom Brady left in 2019, they lost that playoff game to the team that he was playing footsie with under the table, actually. Never mind. The bottom line is
that was the finale. Yeah, but it
Robert Kraft has already pointed out that he's not too psyched about a 3-year playoff drought. If Bill Belichick is advertising this as, hey, it's a process and we might not look like we know what the hell we're doing until Halloween, at the end of the year, are you going to have playoff wins or even a playoff appearance to show to an owner who's already looking at his watch and saying, what are we doing? And then in turn, what does Robert Kraft do? Does he say, well, Bill's had a lot of success here and he's got us in the throes of a rebuild. He's got us in the halfway through a renovation with all this new offense. Do I bring in another guy and waste another year of Mac? I have to let him finish his project now. I mean, this is the shit that's going on behind the scenes, folks. Again, as I told you a couple of years ago, the stuff that was going on behind the scenes and you weren't listening. This is what's going on. These are the measures of what the Patriots will be like in the 2020s.
It shouldn't take that long, though.
But how much leeway does Bill get to rebuild the offense, to have his vision for the 2020s take shape, especially when the cratering, and cratering is a relative term here, a modest cratering, especially when the cratering came because of, in part, mismanagement of Tom Brady's final years. Look, Robert Kraft wanted him to stay, Brady. Belichick didn't. And he convinced Kraft of that. And look what Brady's done since. Plus, he pissed him off so bad in 2019, Brady went out and started,
Number one, it should not stop it. Stop it. You got to cut it off there.
John, cut it.
We number one, it shouldn't take that long. And if it takes more than a year, or it takes even to Halloween, as you suggest, then it's taken too long. And then then they get crushed for making bad hires with the offensive coaching staff, and Bill Belichick gets crushed for altering a system that led to a Pro Bowl appearance for his rookie quarterback who looked pretty damn good last year, despite being as new as he was to the game. So that's number one. But number two is, when do you start to get legitimately concerned that the progress from this new offense isn't where it should be? Because for me, while it wasn't great today, having laid out all those numbers for the people, I thought it was better than yesterday.
Yep.
And if you get incrementally better day after day after day, and by the time the Panthers come in here for training camp joint practices on August 16th, it looks okay, then you might be on your way. That might be the line for me. If it's still a disaster when Carolina gets here, then I start to raise red flags.
Do you remember how great a job you and I did of reminding everybody about that with Mac and Cam last year? Don't bother us. Don't bother us until joint practices. Don't even make any decisions about these practice numbers that we give you for Cam and Mac. Watch the joint practices. That'll make us learn. And as it turned out, we did learn, because Cam got COVID and Mac didn't, and he owned those practices. There's a shit ton we can get to, but I think we're going to circle back and get to more of it on Thursday, because we've gone for a half an hour. Brady stuff dropped out of the rafters on us. People have heard a lot of conversation about the offense. We got a lot of details. We have next Pats to hit, and we're going to hit it again on Thursday with another pod. We'll try and get more into the nuts and bolts of camp. But I think we're going to pull the ripcord right now, because we're also supposed to be on our writers' call at 2:00, and it's 2:10. We're going to get yelled at.
I'm not going to get yelled at. No, they wouldn't yell at us. We're working.
I know.
We're working.
But hey, folks, thank you very much. Sorry, sometimes we peter out. This is after lunch, and sometimes we both have full stomachs and we're digesting. No excuse, just an explanation. Same thing with Tom Brady and his dalliance with the Miami Dolphins. Talk to you guys later in the week.